Chapter 4 The Runaway Girl. Bess and George, who had jumped out of the car to join Nancy, looked down into the motor of the stalled convertible. "The hex is already working," Bess remarked. "Now a spell has been put on our car." Nancy laughed. "I can almost believe you, Bess, but I shan't let it work long." "I wonder if we could get help at the next farm," Bess suggested. "If it happens to be a house Amish family," said Nancy, "they won't know anything about automobiles." "I suppose the best thing to do," George spoke up, "is to wait for a car to come along and give one of us a hitch into town to find a mechanic." 10 minutes went by, but no vehicle came along the side road. Bess had climbed back into the car and was studying a road map. George, who was looking in the direction from which they had come, suddenly called out, "Here comes someone!" The others glanced back. An Amish woman, wearing a black dress which reached to the top of her high shoes, a black bonnet, and a white shoulder kerchief and apron, walked slowly toward them. "She must live nearby," said Bess, "and will know someone who can help us." To the girls' surprise, as the woman came closer, they could see that she was very young, probably no more than 16 years old. Nancy stepped forward. She waited for the Amish girl to greet her, but she merely nodded to the group, a faraway look in her eyes, and walked on. George glanced at Nancy, whispering, "That's odd. Country folks are usually very friendly." "Maybe it's the custom here for outsiders to speak first," thought Nancy, and hurried after the girl. "Hello," she said. "Our car won't run. Could you tell us where we might have it fixed?" The Amish girl stopped and turned. She smiled gently at Nancy. She was very pretty, with large brown eyes and long lashes. "I am so sorry about the car. You are visitors here, ain't?" Nancy gave her name and added that she was from River Heights. She introduced Bess and George. "I am Manda Kreutz," the girl told them. "I am walking from Lancaster." "Lancaster?" George repeated. "That's over 10 miles from here." Manda nodded. "It is good to walk," she said, "and I know shortcuts across the fields." Then her face clouded. "I am going back to my home, but my father, maybe he will not take me back." The 3 girls from River Heights were startled by the announcement. They were curious to know what Manda Kreutz meant, but did not want to embarrass her by asking for an explanation. But apparently Manda suddenly decided that she could trust the 3 friendly girls and that they would understand her problem. Even though their way of living was far different from hers, they were not much older than she and shared the same feelings. "We are Amish, and my father is very strict," Manda said. "When I finished 8th grade, he wanted me to stay home and work on the farm, but I wanted to study more and learn about the world." She had decided recently that perhaps this was wrong. Life was very good on an Amish farm, and there was never any want. "But I did not appreciate this," she said. "I ran away from home 3 months ago and went to Lancaster. In the daytime I worked in a bakery, and evenings I attended night school." Wistfully, she added, "But I miss my people, and yet I am so afraid my father will not let me live on the farm anymore." The 3 girls assured Manda that everything would probably work out and wished her the best of luck. Then Nancy asked her again if she knew anyone around who might repair the car. "Yes," the Amish girl replied. "Rudolph. He is on a farm a mile from here. He can help you. He's church Amish." Manda offered to stop there and ask Rudolph to bring his toolkit. Nancy thanked her, but said she would walk along with Manda to talk to Rudolph herself. Nancy was intrigued by the girl and her story. Also, she was eager to learn more about the Amish people and their customs. Manda seemed pleased by the arrangement. Bess and George said they would stay with the car until Nancy and the mechanic returned. As the Amish girl and Nancy hurried along the road, Manda talked freely about her problem. Papa is afraid if I learn too much, I will not be an Amish woman any longer. But he is wrong. I might not be so strict as he is. We have no conveniences in our house or on our farm. I think that is foolish. Papa and Mama work too hard, and we have no books except our German Bible and the Gebrauch book. What is the Gebrauch book? Nancy asked. Manda explained that it told about powwowing, how to cure people when they are ill. It is not done by medicine, she said. It is accomplished by the laying on of hands of the sick. Not everyone can learn this and make it work. My mother can powwow. Again, Nancy looked puzzled, and Manda said that the laying on of hands was called powwowing. Then she added, "But I'd like to read and learn more things. I do not think this is wrong." Presently, a farmhouse came into sight, and Manda said that was where Nancy would find Rudolph. "I will leave you now," the Amish girl said. "I hope Rudolph can fix your car all right." "You still have a long way to walk," said Nancy. "Why don't you wait until the car is fixed and I'll drive you home?" Manda's face took on a look of fright. Then she said, "Oh, no! My father is strict house Amish and would never forgive me if I came home in an automobile. I thank you. I will walk the rest of the way." Nancy said goodbye and watched the girl as she plodded down the road. Then, turning, she walked up the lane to Rudolph's house. A rosy-cheeked, red-haired young man, wearing a straight-brimmed black hat and black homemade cloth suspenders over his red shirt, saw her coming. He walked to meet Nancy and then bowed. "I was told by Manda Kreutz that you are an expert mechanic," Nancy said. "My car is stuck down the road. Can you help me out?" "Yeah, I will help you," he said. "I will get my car and tools." He disappeared behind the house for a few minutes, then drove out a small coupe. Nancy climbed in beside him, and they went back to the stalled convertible where she introduced Bess and George. "Girls, this is Rudolph," she said. The young man acknowledged the introduction with a nod of his head, then said to George, "You are a girl? Your name is George, ain't?" George chuckled and admitted that was her name. Rudolph shook his head and remarked that among plain people, a man has a man's name and a woman a woman's name. The tomboyish girl did not take offense at the criticism. Laughing, she told Rudolph that she had not named herself. "But I like having a boy's name," she admitted. "It's different." Rudolph made no further comment. He began investigating the car and worked with amazing speed. One minute he was under the convertible, the next he was tinkering under the hood, and a moment later he was reaching into the dashboard to test the ignition. Within 5 minutes, Rudolph said he had found the trouble. "What is it?" Nancy asked. "The feed line, a twist in it." He soon had this fixed, and the car started smoothly. As Nancy was paying Rudolph, she asked the young man whether he knew Alpha Zinn. "Ja, he sells old furniture. It is not worth much, but he charges a high price. That is not the way we Amish would do." Rudolph said no more. Apparently he was a man of few words. Jumping into his car, he started the motor and drove down the road. Then the girls got into the convertible and started off. Nancy glanced at her watch. "I'm afraid that it's too late now to call on Mr. Zinn today." Bess agreed and declared she was getting hungry anyway. She would like to have one of those big Pennsylvania Dutch meals she had read about. "So would I," said Nancy. "But first I'd like to go to the Kreutz farm and see how Manda made out. I have a feeling that if her father is as stern as she said, he may not let her stay. Then we can take her somewhere else. I'm sure she's dead tired." "Good idea," said George. "Bess will have to wait." The girls did not know exactly where the Kreutz farm was, but would inquire farther down the road. There was a good chance, too, of overtaking Manda before she reached her home. But though they followed the road for 3 miles, they did not see her. "She probably took a shortcut across the fields," George remarked. Nancy pulled into the next farm to ask for directions. A serene-faced woman answered the door when George knocked. She wore a dainty white mull cap over her straight, tightly pulled back black hair, which was twisted into a bun at the nape of her neck. In reply to George's question, she pointed across the field, saying, "At the next crossroad, turn left, and you can't miss the Kreutz farm." 10 minutes later, Nancy pulled up in front of the Kreutz homestead. It was a large, plain 2-story house without blinds or curtains. A short distance away was a very large stone barn built on 2 levels of ground. There were several other smaller buildings dotting the yards. Since no one was around, Nancy got out and knocked on the front door. It was nearly half a minute before anyone answered. Then an Amish woman, who looked as if she had been crying, opened the door. Nancy was sure that things had not gone well for Manda. "You're Mrs. Kreutz?" Nancy asked, smiling. The woman nodded but did not say anything. Nancy wondered if it was because she was shy or whether she might be too choked up to speak. "Is Manda at home?" Nancy inquired. "You know Manda?" the woman countered. Nancy replied that she had met the girl on the road. Mrs. Kreutz gave Nancy and the cousins, who were still in the car, searching looks, then said, "Manda did not say you were coming here." Nancy told the whole story, and suddenly Mrs. Kreutz burst into tears. "Manda has gone again," she wailed. "Papa is so strict. He told Manda she could live here again, but he gave orders that nobody in the family would be allowed to speak to her." "How dreadful!" Nancy cried involuntarily. "And you have a big family?" "6 sons. They are married and have their own farms, but they visit us often. Papa and I do not agree about Manda," Mrs. Kreutz went on. "But Papa is Meister." Noticing the girls' puzzled expressions, Mrs. Kreutz said it meant master, and whatever instructions Papa gave had to be obeyed. Suddenly, Mrs. Kreutz looked pleadingly at Nancy. "Maybe Papa would listen to you, since you are outside our family. He will not admit to us, but his feelings are hurt because his only daughter has left home. Please talk to him about Manda. He is near the barn by the bullpens." Nancy agreed to talk to him, although she had little hope of its doing any good. Bess and George got out of the car, and the 3 girls walked toward the barn. At the rear of it, they saw a large fenced-in enclosure with 3 pens. In each stood a huge black bull. Mr. Kreutz was working in the first one. He was a giant of a man with a ruddy complexion, sandy hair, and a long beard. As he heard the girls' footsteps, the farmer looked up. At the same instant, the huge bull beside him lowered its horns, caught up the man, and threw him across the pen. End of Chapter 4.